Well, I am canning some dried beans, pinto beans and the white ones. These here are Great Northern. I've got 6 Great Northern and 8 pintos. And what I have done is wash them in a strainer, colander, and separated the beans first. I put them here first on that cutting board under there. Separated them out, make sure there's no rocks and anything. Wash the beans, and then you want to soak the beans. Now, I usually soak them for 3 to 5 hours. These are going to soak probably 3 hours, something like that, before I start canning them. And you say, well, my gosh, you don't even have any beans in there hardly. Put 1 cup of beans in a quart. That is a quart jar. 1 cup of beans in a quart. Half a cup in a pint if you're doing pints. Yes, it doesn't look like much, but I'll show you in just a minute after they get through soaking for a few hours, and they're going to double in size. Just for perspective, a 4-pound bag of pintos does, I believe it's 10 quarts. I've got 8 quarts here, but I've got some over here soaking, and I'm just going to fix those tonight because I had the Great Northerns, and I wanted to see how many Great Northerns I got I only had 2 1-pound packages of the Great Northern, the white beans. Well, I went outside, got some work done. It's been about 4 hours, and as you can see, they've about doubled in size. They were about right there, I think, when we last spoke. And so let me show you what I do from here. I don't use that water. I drain that water and then put fresh water in them. So let me show you how I do that. So all I do is just use this little strainer. Strain the water off. And I fill it back up. Now you may not want to use tap water that may have chlorine or something in it. Our water is pretty good, and I'll fill it up to that top of that shoulder right there. You want an inch of headspace in that jar. So that is full. Let me do another one. So they're all filled up. Some people, I've seen some YouTube videos, some people rinse theirs twice, sometimes rinse them over and over and over again. I don't see why, okay? Again, I'm not a canning guru, so I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm just telling you what I do. I rinse it one time. I think the water contains a lot of the goodie on that bean. A lot of the flavor and thickening agent of the bean, I think, is in the water. So I rinse it once just because, shoot, everybody else does, but I don't rinse it over and over again, just one time. Now we're ready to debubble it and put some salt in it. Most things you have to, and I know you don't use a metal utensil, but you have to get down in here on the sides and try to get all the bubbles released, and it's just kind of a thing. It's kind of a process. With these beans, shoot, you just stir them up a little bit. That'll knock out any bubbles that may be in them. Unless that's the way I do it. Again, not the guru here. And we are debubbled. All right, now, next, salt. Okay, so I've got what is called canning and pickling salt. And you're really not supposed to use iodized salt, the regular table salt that you would have. Now, this is 1 teaspoon. And I will do all the jars and get right back with you. Just in case there's any residue, you got any salt on the lip or any other thing, you wipe off the lips, the top lip of the jar. So I'm boiling the lids, or I'm getting the lids hot. They won't boil, but in hot water. It's my understanding that Ball now says it's really not necessary, but my wife does it, so I'm going to do it. Got a little flame under it. We'll get it warm. I'm not going to bring it to a boil, but I'll get it pretty hot. And if you don't have a home canning kit those are really, really nice. You get a magnetic lifter to get your lids out of the hot water without burning yourself. This little tool is very valuable to get the hot jars out of the canner so you don't burn yourself. It's pretty cheap. I want to say it's 10 or 15 bucks. Maybe a little more. I'll put a link to it below, but those are pretty nice. You may want to look at that if you don't have one already. Home canning kit. So as you can see, my water's pretty hot. It's not boiling, but it's hotter than I want to touch. I use the lid lifter that comes with that little kit. Magnetic. Get the lids out, and we'll put the rings on. So I put the rings on tight. Remember, we've wiped off the lip of the jar, salt in it, lid on it, and I don't just crank down on it, but I get it tight, finger tight. Pretty tight, and then off to the canner. Now I have got a big canner. That is the All-American 930. I can't put it on tripod. Tripod's not tall enough to show you, but I've got 7 quarts in the bottom of this thing with about 3 inches of water. So you put 3 inches of water in it, 7 quarts, sitting on one of those baffles, like that. That's in the bottom of it, but it's also on top of this layer. And then you start layering and putting your next layer of quartz on it. Okay? So I'll put 7 quarts on top of those. Let me show you that when I'm done. Okay, so again, 14 quarts in this big old thing. I've got the burner turned on. We're gonna start heating it up. Let me show you how to set the lid. This is kind of a review of the All-American canner as much as it is how to can beans, because this canner is a time saver. Twice as many quarts as you're going to do with just about any other canner. So let me show you how to seal the lid on this thing. It does not have a rubber seal, so let me show you how to seal the lid. Okay, so they recommend that you use olive oil. So I just take a bottle of olive oil and I just put a little bit, about a half a capful. Let me try to get out of the light for you. This, obviously the lid goes on like that. So let me show you the mating surface. It is going to mate with that canner over there, right here on this edge. So that's where you want to apply just a light film of olive oil. They say enough that you can feel, but not necessarily that you can see. So you just, so it's very, very light. It's not dripping and running. But basically, you've got a little bevel right there on the lid, and you'll put olive oil all around that bevel. That's where you put the olive oil. So I gotta do that and then put the lid on it. Okay, this is how you set the lid on, and this is everything I do from here on will be per the manufacturer's instructions. You've got an arrow right there. Don't know if you can see that. You got a little groove right there. Put the arrow on just to the right of that groove, and then swing it over where the arrow and the groove are lined up. Do 2 of the wing nuts, or the well, I don't know what they're called. Anyway, 2 of those across from each other. Don't go around like this. Go back and forth across from each other. And you want to make this gap right there. I don't know whether you can see that real well or not. You want to make this gap as uniform as you can make it. So right now, it's a little tall on this side, and that side I will back off of just a little bit and tighten down on this side. And I usually, because the kitchen is so dark, I usually get a flashlight to help me see a little bit. Make sure. You may have a lot more light than me. That looks pretty good. I'll check it with a flashlight in just a minute. When these 2 sides are good, then lift up the other 2. and bring them down. Hand tight, no wrenches. Bring those up, the other two, across from each other, always across from each other. Now I'll come back and put my glasses on and come back and check that spacing. And then as it heats up, when it gets pretty close to jiggling, I'll come through one more time and just tighten them down just a little bit. Again, just finger tight. Pretty strong. I mean, you want to make sure they're tight. But it's boiling now. I mean, it's not boiling. It's coming up to heat right now. And when it comes up even further, we'll come back and I'll show you. Okay, so you bring it up to heat, high heat. Bring it up to where it starts venting. I think you can probably see that. And then I think the book says let it vent like that for about 10 minutes. And then, okay, gonna put the jiggler on it. 10 pounds. And remember, that is steam, so use a rag. And now we'll wait for it to start jiggling. When it starts, at that point, we will time 90 minutes. Well, we are jiggling. We are up at 10 pounds on the gauge, but you go by the jiggler. The jiggler says it's up to pressure. So we'll start our timer right now, count 90 minutes. Turning down the heat as we go, just a little bit at a time, small amounts at a time. You want this to jiggle somewhere between 1 and 4 times per minute. Okay, so it's been 90 minutes and it stopped jiggling. I will not do anything to it to help it cool down quicker. It cools down on its own. Right now it's about 8 pounds of pressure, so it's coming down. I turned it off about 5 minutes ago. And I'll show you the results. Okay, so we are done. Pressure is off. Take the jiggler off. Take this off and point it away from me so the steam will not hit me in the face. Let it drip for just a second. Okay, so I got them out of the canner, put them on the counter. It's a cold counter, so I put a towel down so you don't put a hot jar on a cold counter. That could be disastrous, could make it crack. Anyway, yeah, when you look at it, you would think that they're not full, and it looks like the Great Northerns I'm not sure about. That's the first time I've done them in a long time. But these look just like the ones I canned the other day did. And I thought, well, I should have put more beans in there. But after a little while, they swell up a little bit more, even after they're out of the canner. And they will fill the jar up. That's a full jar. That's one that I did the other day. So these should swell back up. I mean, swell up more. And pretty much fill up those jars. So 14 jars. I really like the canner simply because you can do so dang many at one time. So right below the video, I will put a link to the canner. So look below the video and get the link and see if it's something you might want to purchase. They're not cheap, but maybe something you'd want to purchase. And also that little home canning kit. That comes in real handy with the, jar lifters and all that stuff. Might want to take a look at that and get you one of those too if you do canning. So there's the review of the All-American 930 canner, pressure canner, and also a review of a video showing you how to can pinto beans, can dried beans. Pretty easy. Be a real good project for a first-time canner because just not a whole lot to remember, not a whole lot to do. All right, I believe we've done everything we need to do. We're gone.